Hey, Nathan here from PH Studios. Welcome back to another XNA video. Last video we discussed the screen system update, which we added mouse to the screen system. And it was a pretty simple fix, but I decided to talk about the input map a little bit more because a few people had questions about how does that work using the dictionary class and things like that. So that tutorial ran a little bit longer than just talking about the mouse. And then I also discussed the SVN repositories. I will also discuss them in this video at the very end, so if you did not watch the last video, I will get to it at the end of this one. Okay, so lots of people have commented and emailed and had questions about the camera, like how to do something. So I decided to build the camera class a little bit more in depth and increase the functionality of it a little bit more. So what has changed in this version versus 2 weeks ago when I updated it to XNA 4.0? The only thing that's pretty much changed in this one is that we created a way to follow a gameplay object. Now we say follow. We call camera.follow, we pass it the gameplay object source and a rotation offset. This will tell the camera to follow the specific gameplay object and rotate the camera by a certain amount to whatever you want to. I use it to automatically position the camera appropriately for the gameplay object. Okay, so I also added a focus point to the camera. That was another thing that somebody had a question about. Before, on the sample before I released 2 weeks ago, it would only zoom to the top left of the screen. Now I've implemented a focus point to the camera to where it will zoom wherever you want it to. If we pass it 0, 0, or if we just call this constructor here, the focus point will be the center of the viewport we pass in. We can modify the focus point here, and it will set it here. Okay. Now, since I did that, I removed the position that we had before and just use a focus point. So when we're shaking the camera, we just shake the focus point. Because that'll also shake things when we zoom in closer or farther away as it's shaking around. Since I added a focus point, I changed the transform matrix so it's transforming to that focus point, then it's rotating it by the object rotation, which is up here, and I mentioned the question mark colon in the last video. Just think of the question mark as a question. Source is not equal to null. Yes. Alright, so now we set source.rotation is equal to that. Source is equal to null. We just set the standard camera rotation. So this is a condensed if block and else block in the same line. So the condition is here. Think about this inside an if. So if source is not equal to null, then we use source.rotation. Else we use the camera's rotation. So that's what the 1 minute overview on the question mark colon means. Alright, back to the transform matrix. We negate the object rotation plus the delta rotation, which is determined by this rotation offset here, and then the delta rotation is up here as well. Because if we do have a source, we use the source's rotation offset. Otherwise, we offset it by 0. Then we scale it using the zoom power to the 10, zoom power to the 10, and 0. and then we translate it to the negative object position. Okay, so this transform matrix will allow you to use a dedicated focus point for the camera to set up where you want it to zoom in and out. Usually the center, so I just use this constructor here for the sample because that will set the focus point to the center of the viewport. Okay, so I added another feature that will follow the player. So I had to add a keyboard press for F that targeted followed the player on or off. So if the source is equal to null, which means it is not following the player, we call .follow with the player and the rotation offset. Now remember, this can be anything you want. I just decided to use it to position the sprite appropriately for the camera. If the camera source has something in it, we pass it null and give it a rotation offset of 0. And then I added another line here to say how to do that. And then I also decided to draw the plus for the camera's focus point. So that's just a plus sign. You can change it whatever you want. You can use a texture if you want to, but use it in this sprite bash begin and draw an end cycle here. Because this is transformed. This begin and end cycle here, this is transformed. This is not. So this will be above everything else. It will not change based on the camera's position. So that's basically it for the changes. If I zoom in and out, it'll zoom in and out to that specific plus sign there. So I zoom in, zoom out. It's not zooming into the top left as before. Now, I also changed the way that the arrow keys work. Last sample update, you press the up arrow keys and you will move up. You'll move up here, if you see where my mouse is. You'll move up here if you press the up key. You'll move down here if you press the down key. Left if you press the left key. And right if you press the right key. Now, this has changed. Because when I adjust the camera, things will be different. As you can see, if I press F, that rotation offset positions the sprite where I want it to be in the window. Because I want the sprite to be up according to the camera. Now if I press F again, I'll stop following, and that's the way it is before. So that rotation offset is what rotates the camera when I press F. Okay, so how did I change that? Because if I did F here, when I press the up arrow key, it would move to the left. It'll move over here. So I changed that by utilizing the sprite's rotation. So when I press up, it'll move based on angle. The speed will stay at 5 pixels per game loop. So when I press the up arrow key, it'll move where the turret is pointing. So if I press the up arrow key right now, it'll move to the right. Move down, it'll move in the opposite direction. Move left, it'll move the appropriate direction. If we're looking up from the turret, we move left and right, up and down. But it does it on all rotation values. So if we look at it here, if I'm pressing the up arrow key, I'm moving to the right instead of up. So let me rotate the sprite and let me hold down the up arrow key as I'm rotating. I'm just holding down the up arrow key and I'm just rotating the game object. So that's the difference I had to do. Now if I do follow and zoom in, I can move up and down and left and rotate it. If I want to. And now we're actually following the game object. And as I'm holding it, it'll be offset a little bit. But when I stop moving, you will see the sprite position back. So that's this camera update. You can build on this follow by saying follow this specific object at this specific time for a specific duration. So like if you say you have a game and you have your main camera area looks like this, and you have some missile approaching from the far right side, you can say follow that missile for 10 seconds. Or follow that missile for 1 second just to say this is where it is. And you can even set it to this is where the camera is before. Follow that missile for 10 seconds with a 1 second transition time. So if I press F right now, it immediately goes to that player. If I press F, it immediately goes back. So I can say a 1 second transition time and it will transition to that point there. And transition back, and it'll take 1 second instead of instant. So that's one thing. Oh, I also added the bomb or the shake camera effect. Changes the focus point. So as I'm zooming in, I can press B and it'll, of course I disabled zoom, but if I zoom in and press B, it'll just shake the focus point. Now, I do not have it scaled for zoom, so if you want to do that yourself, you can. The farther back you zoom, it'll still be a few pixels, but I'm not scaling it like zoom. Remember how let me stop following and just move the camera. If I zoom in closer, my movements will be slower. I scale the movement of the camera based on the zoom level, but not the shake. Alright, so that's it for this update. If you can think of any more features you want to see, just let me know. You can now follow a gameplay object, and it now uses a focus point, so you can change out where it is zoom and where to set the focus point, basically. So if you call the camera constructor just like this, it'll default it to the center of the viewport as the focus point. Just like I had it before, the center here. Now, if I set it to camera is equal to new camera, let's call it this constructor. Let's call graphics device dot viewport dot and position. Let's say vector 2.0 focus. Vector 2.0 zoom 1.0 f and rotation 0.0 f. So now the focus point is to the top left, but for some reason that plus sign's not there. Oh, that could be why. So instead of using new vector 2, let's just set the camera.focus point. There we go. Now you can see the half of the plus sign up there. Or a fourth, basically. The bottom right fourth of that plus sign. And that's where the focus point is. Okay, so that's it for this sample. Again, if you can think of anything else to add, let me know. And let me talk about the SVN stuff. Okay, so if you go to the main website, phstudios.com, there will be an SVN Repositories link. Now, this will always stay with these appropriate links with the new layout coming. It might be down here a little bit more, or it might be to the left, but these main links will be somewhere along the top of this page. I haven't fully decided what the layout's going to be yet. I have a few write-ups, but I haven't decided just yet. So if you click this SVN Repositories link, you will get what it is, space shooter and extra, and that direct link to that repository. Now, Drupal likes to convert any URLs to clickable URLs. I did not want to do this. I could have added a code block for these, but I decided not to. You can just copy and paste this in a whatever SVN code or program you use. But either one of these are clickable. They take you to the same place. This one just tells you the link so you can copy and paste it in a program like Tortoise SVN or something else that you prefer. So if we click these, it'll take you to the repository URL. And this will tell you what the URL name is, what revision I'm currently working on, and the 3 folders. And I mentioned in a previous video that trunk is where the main development goes in. Branches usually contain the main development plus any specific changes I make for somebody. Like if we look at the particle system, for example, I built the main particle system and somebody had a question about how to create the menu for the bubbles game that I was going to make. So that main particle system is still in the trunk folder, but the actual specific implementation for the bubbles menu is in the branches folder. Tags does not have the tags folder does not have anything. The tags folder usually contains a specific folder in the trunk at a specific point in time in a zip format. It is not, most of them do not contain the .svn hidden folders. I like to export the SVN folders and then zip them up and then put them as a tag. So you can just download these zip files and use them however you want to. The trunk folder gives you all the solutions, the classes, and all that stuff that you can also view in the website. You do not need to have the Visual Studio if you just want to see the code here. Okay. So that's the trunk, branches, and tag format that I like to use. So I currently have 4 SVN repositories set to public access, which means you can read them, you can get an SVN checkout of them, but you cannot update them. So they're the Space Shooter and extras, the XNA samples, which contain all the 4.0, and the old ones is empty. The old folder is empty. And tags, I did not convert all those as tags because this is not a 4.0 update, so I did not convert that one. Screen system, this includes both the system itself and the implementation, where if you're just concerned about using the DLL file, just the implementation, look at the samples, screen system implementation, and there will be the DLL. Okay, so that's what the SVN repositories contain. Now let's talk about the forums. If you go to phstudios.com/forums, you'll see this page, and if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see PH Studios content. You want to look at the content category, subcategory, and then the XNA sub-forum. So if you just click XNA here, it'll take you to the XNA page, and you'll have a link to the SVN Repositories. It's a pinned topic, so it'll be at the very top. And just basically what you see here for the forums. So that's how to get access to my SVN repositories. Just like always, any video I release here, I will provide the .zip in the description of the YouTube video, and the posts of the Drupal main website or forums, there will be a direct link to the download. These will not be an SVN link, they will just be a PH Studios link, so they'll be a pretty short link. Anyway, that's it for this tutorial and this weekend. I hope you enjoyed the updates to the screen system and the camera. I think I did most of what everybody wanted, except for some things that would take weeks to implement. So I hope you enjoyed the updates, and next weekend there will be 3 tutorials. One of them will be a dedicated overview on collision detection. I will discuss rectangular collision detection and per pixel collision detection. Expect this video to be about 40 minutes to 50 minutes long, because per pixel collision detection is pretty complex. And the 2 other tutorials will be content tutorials. I think it's about time we finished up the After Effects series for the TDCS. I think that has 1 tutorial left, and then let's do another Photoshop tutorial. So I hope to see you next weekend for 3 tutorials.